impact is definitely what I'm going for. I
Yeah.
think that's a reason why the journey for me has been quite long. I wanted to get there very fast, but as I've matured, I understood what you just said. Like, to make an impact doesn't come overnight, and especially getting to where you want to be in terms of your creative endeavors,
Yeah.
it really takes time.
Welcome back to the Corner Talks podcast. I have my good friend here.
How's it going, man? Happy to be back.
No, it shouldn't be about anything. Like, this is one life.
Yep, one life? Like, fucking do it.
My guy.
Like, she just got it. She totally understood it.
20 years old when I started just watching a lot of movies.
And it tells a story. I want to tell a story.
Actor, writer, and emerging director, Gabriel Charles Rogers. What's going on, buddy? How are you?
Man, I'm doing fantastic, Daniel. Thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, of course, Gabe. Honestly, it's been amazing. The last couple of months, we've been connecting just through direct messages on Instagram. Had no idea who you were. You were referred to me by a good friend of mine, a mutual connection that I made. His name is Kevin Reed. He's an actor producer, very fond of my work, especially the short film I made with Adam Lupus called Second Chance. And anyway, he referred me to you, and he said, he's an aspiring filmmaker like yourself. He's trying to get his name in the industry. Could you give him some guidance in the writing process? And that's what we've been doing the last few months, right? We've just been kind of having a back and forth. I know I wasn't as available as maybe you needed me to be. I've been traveling to LA and I've been busy with my other personal projects, but always happy to help, always happy to be there to give you advice and some guidance.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Of course. So, like I said, I was referred to with the idea, the notion that you were a writer. You were developing many projects yourself. And I'm always fond of someone that's a writer, because if you know how to tell a story and you want to be a director, those go hand in hand. People don't realize that. So it starts always from the root of telling stories. So I commend you for that. But I also want to know, like, how did your passion for the film industry kind of develop in the first place?
Honestly, it developed through middle school.
Okay.
Acting out in classes, singing songs from characters that I would always hear.
Awesome.
Like from Dark Tales and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I knew nothing about the industry, what acting was. I thought it was a bunch of like robots that had like these faces of people that somebody would always put on for a specific type of movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It wasn't until my teacher in middle school told me, you should do acting. I'm like, what's that? She told me about it, broke it down, how I could start out in the theater. And I said, okay, a young kid, I'm just like, let me go with it.
Yeah.
Really started out with theater acting. And I just found like I took a natural liking to it. And with that, it came like more of the understanding, like, this is what storytelling is. This is story, like, with the body. What else can I do?
Right.
So not knowing that question would take me into like paper and pencil, I started to develop like my own stories in that same class, middle school class, and I loved it. So from there on, I just knew, I'm like, I could do more of this. I could tell stories.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Well, it reminds me a lot like myself, like just kind of honing those skills or just tapping into that childhood dream, right? It all started when you were young. A lot of people, they develop their passions and their aspirations as they get older, but you and I are very similar that way. Like, I've always wanted to be a writer director when I was like 5, believe it or not. I didn't know what I was doing or where it would lead me. How do we even break in? But as you get older, obviously you mature and you develop those kind of skill sets. My point being is that I was always fascinated with filmmaking and storytelling, and how the whole process comes together. And that's so amazing that we kind of share the same kind of like starting point, of how this kind of passion cultivated from the first place, or was conceived, I should really say. But that's awesome, man. And I want to know, so like you were touching on the fact that you were fascinated with writing and storytelling and characters, and really initially acting as well, right? Just like how these bigger than life characters were presented on screen and portrayed, I can imagine. Why did you want to become a screenwriter though, as opposed to any other profession in the industry? I know I just mentioned you were an emerging director, but screenwriter was how I was introduced to you. And I'd like to know, like, what was your initial steps and inclination towards that?
Well, I can say that I know for screenwriting, there's a lot of things in me that I have not yet said. And I know that need to be said, not only for myself, but I listen to people and conversations. So in those conversations, there's a lot of like similarities and agreements that you and another person like feel.
Right. Yeah.
And I feel I'm an empath. So I very much feel strongly about like when I agree with someone and it's like, oh, they that needs to be heard, that needs to be said. So I would take it upon myself to like say, you know what? I need to figure out a way to get what I feel and this person feel and the way that person feels out there. Because sometimes it's important information that just needs to be spread. So I'm like, let me take this to what I know best, screenwriting. You know, like I said, I did my first story was told in middle school. It was opinion based off of a Stephen King book. So I wrote my opinion and why these like four characters, I forgot the name of the title, but why these four characters went through, may have felt how they were feeling in that story. And yeah, from that point on, it's just like I took that and I started to feel like, okay, I feel like there's more things in me, like per se, like character wise, like a lot of characters in me that I could like tell and start to like develop and put into form, you know?
Yeah, that's amazing, man. And that was well said, because that's why we do this craft, right? That's why I initially was captivated by storytelling, is being able to capture your voice, but essentially articulate what's going on, whether it's in your mind, how you perceive the world. And it's done vicariously through characters and scenes, right? Like a lot of people don't realize, the good writers, I should say, the true writers, project themselves into those stories, right? They sprinkle them throughout all the characters. It might be even a scene that's directly taken from an event they've experienced. And the reason why is you can't beat reality, right? The reality is sometimes even more fascinating than fiction, as they say, stranger than fiction. So I love how you put it like that. And the reason why I asked that is because I myself, I'm a director. I identify as a director first and foremost, but as much as I'm still a writer, that was kind of like my first love. That's how I got into the whole filmmaking craft, period. And that's how, when I introduced you, I was so proud the fact that you had an understanding and also an appreciation for storytelling, because people don't realize that you don't just get thrusted into directing. You understand the craft of what a story and how a story is being put together. I still remember at Toronto International Film Festival, I went to one of the screenings, and at the Q&As, someone stood up, you know, our age, whatever, like at our level in the industry, and said, you know, how do you become where you're at, where you're at right now? And he's like, you really want to know? And everyone was expecting, you know, a well thought out technical kind of answer, right? And he said, you have to know how to write a story. And the guy was blown away. We were all like, kind of, I was already familiar with that answer, but at the same time, it kind of confirmed to me. It gave me a little bit more confidence in the idea that I was on the right track, and I was knowing what I should be focusing my attention on. Because I think to distinguish you, I mean, from good to great, is to really understand the process of telling stories. Would you agree?
I agree.
Yeah. That's awesome. So I'm really happy, like I said, that you took the initiative. You seem very passionate, very hardworking. Just from our short, you know, conversations back and forth through text, I could see that you're really like gunning for to become an impactful storyteller. So I'd like to know, do you see yourself transitioning to another role? I know we discussed directing. Do you see yourself doing producing, anything like that? Talk to me more about. You're in the process. You said you're an emerging director. What does that mean? How would you describe that to the audience?
I would describe it as I see myself as a Tyler Perry in a sense, Spike Lee.
Okay.
And as well as, because, you know, coming from where I'm coming from,
right?
If I'm honest, you know, there are a lot of heartfelt stories, and I always touch on that because that's the base and the root of where I want to live with movies,
Right.
like telling the heartfelt stories, where not more so the intellectual stories. You know, like I want people to feel it in their hearts when they leave that
You
seat.
want the stories to drive through the emotion rather than the logic of the story. Like instead of them
Yeah.
questioning like how is this possible, it's more the story. It's the story and the characters and the core of the story that moves you, right? Like hence Star Wars,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Star Wars doesn't make any sense if you think about it, but the reason why people love it is because of the emotion they feel when they watch it,
hmm
right?
hmm
Is that
But I
what you
just
mean?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, and I just see myself putting on a lot of people to be
Sorry,
put it
what
like
would you
that.
say? You
And
putting
sorry,
no,
I
are you
said
saying about the people? We're talking over each other. Beauty of the Zoom call.
um, I see myself putting on a lot of faces
Okay.
in movies. You know,
Oh, you're talking about like you actually see yourself like you said, Tyler Perry, not from a producer standpoint, you actually mean writing the material and also assuming those characters, like the
yeah,
roles of those characters. Wow, that's really fascinating, man. Kind of like an Adam Sandler as well, right? But it
yes.
depends on like what kind of genre, right? Do you see yourself more comedy or is it drama? Like what are you leaning towards?
I love to make people laugh.
Okay, good. Okay.
I, I do love drama though because it excites me.
Awesome, man.
I love a good story like that.
Yeah. Well, I admire your ambition, man. Like that's awesome. Like we need more of that talent. I was always fascinated growing up with like the Eddie Murphy movies because he would take on different characters as well. Um,
Yeah.
so I love to see that. Yeah, for yourself, like writing those characters. I would never, I always say never know or this and that regarding acting, and people say don't say that. Like you should give it a shot, but I don't know. I just can't find the bug, like the passion. I don't know. Maybe if through my films, I'll do a cameo and maybe it'll strike me and someone might tap me on the shoulder and say, "Hey, keep going." But I don't know. Where did you get that motivation to be an actor? Is it like you said, your
Mm.
childhood beginnings?
I think it was
Yeah.
energy I'd always put out. I just always want to make people feel good. At a young age, I always understand. I always understood the power of that. What
Right.
it meant to tell somebody something positive. So luckily, like I said, I had the guidance of the teacher to direct that into acting,
Right.
and I found that as my niche or I tied my niche with people as as a way to extend it into acting to make it a bigger niche, where
Right.
I envelop people in that.
Awesome. Yeah, well, that's what it is, right? It's that playful curiosity as a child, right? You always want to see how you can bridge art and reality and tell your story through that. And that's what you can do essentially as an actor, right? They're like a vessel for that. You become the character. And it's even more interesting with yourself because you want to assume different characters, which is quite fascinating. Did you go to any film institution by any chance, like school for art? I mean, for acting or writing?
I have not. I
Oh,
have not.
okay.
I actually went through a lot of programs, and only one school which was the Vancouver Film School. I did a program with them.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that reminds me of myself. I didn't go to film school as well, but I went to Rain Dance Toronto. So we did like these night courses, which is, a place where a lot of opportunities were presented to me in terms of networking and creating new connections and collaborations that I still work with today. But yeah, it's amazing to me that when I was younger, I would always kind of beat myself up about not being able to go to film school or not getting enrolled. And then now I look back and I want to use it as like a badge of honor that I could, you know what I mean? Like I'm self-made, like I could do it without film school, right? As long as you have the passion and the heart, the intuition, you could get it done. So same for you, right? It's like, once you make it, once you prove yourself, the people that follow and are fans of your work will read up on your story and realize, hey, you can do it even without going to school. All you have to have is that grit, right? That dedication to pursue and follow your heart. So I really admire that, man. It's all about persistence, right? At the end of the day, and that's what you're doing, right? Just kind of creating these stories and seeing how you can like project yourself into these characters. But we live in an interesting age, right? Where social media is a critical tool. It's something that I've had to learn to adapt to, even though I despise it sometimes going on there. Kind of distracts me. But those are personal matters I need to sort out. But whatever have you, it has served me exponentially. For instance, with this podcast, being able to connect with someone like yourself, Kevin Reed, I mentioned earlier, like it wouldn't be possible if I didn't have Instagram. It wouldn't be possible if I didn't have this platform to discuss with creatives. So on that notion, this has allowed me to broaden my network, establish new connections like the one present here today. So I want to ask you, what is your opinion on artists using social media to leverage their brands or creative works?
Honestly, I agree with you in that this right here, this opportunity that's presented to me
Right.
is an amazing one, and it was
Yeah.
given to me by social media.
Yeah.
But if you would have asked me this, and I just didn't agree with social media because I thought like it was stripping away from like the realness and the real lifeness, I should say. Using creative, right?
The value you're saying, you're regarding like to the values of social media, like how they're conveyed.
Yeah,
like what they present for someone.
Yeah, like networking in real life. Like I was always a believer in the old-fashioned networking.
Oh, 100%.
Meeting someone face to face, developing a rapport with them in real life, and then then taking it on the phone or text or something.
Yep. No, I completely understand that, and that's part of the reason why. Like I'm a very social person, but I don't like being on my phone so much. There are times when I kick myself because it's draining. You don't realize it, right? Social media also has a habit of presenting only what's positive, right? Only what's polished, even if it is trying to drive an inspirational message. The way the brain is wired, it only sees the aesthetics, right? You don't like when you talk to someone in person. I get your point. It's like you really feel the humanity. Like you'll mention something to them, and they'll be like, "No, it didn't happen that way," and you'll be like, What do you mean?" And then you'll question it, and then they'll elaborate, and you'll pick each other's brains, and you'll start to understand like they go through their own struggles, or not even for struggles, just like understanding maybe a positive event in their life. They'll showcase it maybe not as so glamorous, right, as it appears to be, and they'll depending who you talk to, obviously, right? Some people like to relish in their own achievements, but for the most part, I understand that it's like you get the human side, right? And you seem like a very honest and genuine person. So this is really just a means of communication, but I'm getting exactly how I would perceive it to be if we saw each other in public, right? Like just walking on the street and having a conversation, right? Like the network would be the same, but I know what you mean. Like when it comes to social media, like you're not sure exactly, like I'm guilty of that, like with regards to how we were texting back and forth. Because I don't have a tone in your voice, because I don't have body language, because I don't have those humanistic qualities that we look for, naturally you come up with your own image of the person, right? How they are and how they're acting. So what I'm saying is that like you're just even more personable when I met you through the Zoom call than I imagine you to be through Instagram, right? Because Instagram, how else can you express your emotions? And I don't want to hear emojis. It's like it'll never be the same with a face-to-face contact, right? Don't you feel the same way?
Yeah,
like,
right.
Did you get that impression when you were talking to me? It's like it's so different when you actually see the person's face and see how they like. I'm big on that, like voice, body language. Like it's a huge difference.
Yeah,
It
is.
Yeah, man. Like just like when I started off this podcast before we were talking, like you're flashing your big smile. Like, hey, honored to be here. Thank you so much. It's like you can you can express that through emojis, but it's not the same. Like I won't feel that same energy. So that's why it's important we retain that old-fashioned way of building the rapport and network. So I 100% agree. For me, social media is just for convenience. Like being able to do this podcast in Zoom, it's so much easier than saying, hey, like book a day or 2 hours out of your day, come to my house, let's do it in my studio. You know what I mean? It's like I love the convenience of this, and it's broadened my opportunities so much and allowed me to connect with people like yourself. So, to each his own, as I always say, right? A big thing with social media is we have to learn how to use it to our advantage, right? Instead of producing all the time, instead of consuming all the time, we have to be producing, right? In order to have like a happy balance. Which I wanted to get to my next point. So like you're a writer, an emerging director, an actor as well. How has social media benefited you in those disciplines in the industry?
Well, I made sure that I used it for good.
Right.
So, for instance, like right here, right now, this is an amazing opportunity,
Of course.
an amazing example of using what you have to your advantage. You know, we met because of Kevin Reed.
Yeah.
In that search, I was looking for a mentor, someone to guide me through this
Yeah.
process of filmmaking, how the writing process could go. It can go up and down.
Yeah.
You know, it's not linear. And yeah, I could say because of yeah, in that token, in that respects,
Yeah.
social media has been giving me like a lot of great
Yeah.
because of yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, that's exactly what it's supposed to be for, right? Like you said, use it for the good, right? As opposed to getting or indulging in the vanity of it, right? The superficiality. You're indulging in the benefits, right? Like it's true intention, and that is to be a networking platform. So we can connect with creatives and artists. Like people don't realize that Instagram was first created as a portfolio. You know what I mean?
Oh,
For artists to, I don't know. Yeah, I've been told that many times. The whole
wow.
intention, yeah, the whole intention was for photographers, graphic designers, to direct people to Instagram, and then they would be able to like just quickly see all their artworks and pictures and things like that. But as visual creatures, human beings, we naturally took hold of that and capitalized, and like with anything, turned it into a bunch of things, right? Some may argue it's softcore pornography. You know what I mean? So anyway, whatever have you, we made it work for ourselves, and I'm glad to see that you're using the platform for the good, because that's how you should use it. Do you believe social media though hinders the creativity, imagination, and focus of an artist, or do you think it incites them to develop new ideas and perspectives?
It's like you said, to each their own. Um, Everybody has their own unique perspectives.
Mhm.
What I've seen and have been fortunate to see is that a lot of creatives use their platform as like a new way to bring in an idea that they've had for years. Like Anderson
Right.
Paak, the way he created or has made his Instagram.
Mhm.
Very,
Sorry, who is
very
this?
Anderson Paak.
Anderson Paak. Okay.
Yeah, he's a musician.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've been following his career and like how he's developed his social media presence?
Yeah. I really follow him for the music. It
Okay.
was when I was just searching up his name and I saw his portfolio and I seen how creative he was. You know, even on that, it was good to see.
Yeah, that's the main thing, right? It's about like, because I studied marketing in university, it's how you brand yourself. That's something that I'm learning as well, with my clothing line, this podcast. How do you get your message out there, right? How do you get your voice out there? I think that's the hardest thing for artists.
Mhm.
Even when I started off writing, like the story goes is I wrote my first screenplay when I was 17, like my feature length screenplay. And, I still have the intention to make it one day, but that's the whole point, right? Is I looked at it and I said, I had so much fun writing this thing and I had this whole visual of how it's going to be shot and edited, that the only way to get it done by me is to know how to be a director, right? And put myself in that position. And it started a long 10-year process ongoing of, getting to that point of being seen and known as a director, right? So I can get to that point where I look back on these scripts I've written and I'm able to, film them, shoot them for the screen, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, very interesting, man. Like you said, to each his own. I like that answer. And yeah, it depends how it all comes down to perception, right? And how you choose to see it. Can it be negative or can it be positive for you? So you decide ultimately, right, how you can manage it. So getting back to like being a writer, it allows us to captivate the audience with a style of storytelling that derives from either how a scene is set up, a character is presented, and the way a story's message is delivered to the audience. And many aspiring filmmakers, including myself, often cite copying their mentor's style of work in storytelling, filmmaking, and overall production as they navigate their own voice. So for myself, I'm a big Tarantino, Scorsese fan, and I
Oh,
often,
what?
yeah, I often, yeah, bro, those are my heroes. That's why I named my
Yeah.
production company 94, is because 94 is the year I was born, but 94 is the year Tarantino made it with Pulp Fiction, like broke through.
Wow.
So it's a sentiment. Yeah, it's a sentiment, bro. So what I'm saying is when I write the same. That's why I posted on my Instagram recently about Tarantino's writing process. I actually do the same writing process. Like I follow literally in his footsteps about
The
how he creates. Sorry.
wow. Wow. The novel. I was reading up on it. He starts in like a novelty sense, like a storybook. Like he'll start his story in the
Yeah,
middle
he'll
of the
novelization kind of thing. You're saying?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, you're right. You're right. But he writes um, like I write like him. He writes like me, kind of thing. Where it's like I was aware of his process, but I didn't really study it so closely. And I just so happened to see like, hey, that's a style. That's a process of writing that is possible, right? Like for me, what I'm saying is that first script, and I've done this for anything that I wrote. I just either have a scene, a title, like a character, or a piece of music that inspires me, and then I just start from the beginning, and I just keep going with the characters until they take over to the finish. Because I know people have outlines, and I know people have notes, and like they do this whole like storyboard concept. But for me, I just like to write like on the page, I bleed on the page and see where it takes me. And obviously, like I go back, I revise, I tweak here and there, and some days like I'm just stuck. But for the most part, like it's amazing to me that I don't know, it gives me chills because I admire him so much that to know that he writes like that, and to know that if I write like that, I'm on the same track, right? It's really uplifting. So yeah, what I'm saying is like even when it comes to directing, right, there's a lot of shots and styles that I try to incorporate from people that I'm inspired by. Not so much my heroes either. Like there's other filmmakers or just pieces of content that I'll view on social media. So I wanted to ask you, do you see yourself following the same approach when writing or eventually directing your own sort of films?
I see. Honestly, I tried to put myself in the mold of somebody else,
Okay.
but I just couldn't see it. Um, but what I would do is always just look at the overall feeling
Hmm.
that they were trying to convey, but not so much the style. I'm trying to like develop my own style, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Well, that's the thing, what I was trying to mention, right? It's like I'm trying to develop my own kind of signature style
Yeah,
or
yeah,
creative flair, but I know it's a common thing. Like even Tarantino says it, that you copy, whether it's intentional or unintentional, you're copying the people you're inspired by to find your own voice, if that makes sense. Um, because like I'm starting, because I've made like several short films, I'm starting to understand like I really love low angle shots. You know what I mean? Like when I shoot a character and people will say that, well, that's to assert dominance, right? And I said, I understand, but like sometimes it's not even for me like dominance. It's just portraying the character that's bigger than life. I don't know. I'm just in love with that angle. But that's just an example, right? Like the only way you're going to discover your style is the more you do, right? So yeah, I was curious, like with all the projects or the projects you anticipate making, do you see yourself kind of like copying the style or like developing your own kind of style? I guess it's too early to say, probably, right?
Well, I'd say I look at a lot of Spike Lee.
Okay.
To be honest
Most
with you, I
likely.
have a
Yeah.
lot of my works on paper
Hmm.
right now. I'm gonna be filming my first documentary coming up soon, a short
Awesome.
film.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Congrats.
and then from there, I hope to take. Thank you. And then from
Yeah.
there, I hope to take it into like more feature films.
Of course,
But
man. Yeah.
yeah,
So
I'd
this
say
sorry, go ahead.
I like to capture the eyes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's important.
Yeah.
Yeah. With the documentary, how, tell us about that. Like, what was the process of getting it made, and what it's all about?
It's still being made,
Okay.
and um, I honestly don't know if I'm able to speak on it right
Oh,
now.
okay. No problem. So did you
No?
get what I'm asking is, did you get funding for this, or is this a small kind of project you're doing with your team, or?
Um, we're getting funded with it. Yeah,
Okay. Awesome. Awesome.
me and some other participants.
Nice.
Yeah, I can say the name. I'm sure you're familiar with Being Black in Toronto. I don't know.
That's an organization?
Yeah,
Being
yeah,
Black
yeah.
in Toronto? No, I'm familiar with Real Canada.
We kind
Do
of.
you
Oh,
know
I don't
them?
know. No.
Yeah, they also like kind of showcase like Black, Indigenous kind of groups like in Toronto that like through film, like emerging filmmakers with those backgrounds. So I believe it's like similar, that kind of organization. But that's great. I'm really happy to see the city, helping out emerging talent because that's something we need more of. Um, for me, like I see myself, big time, mainstream, and I know that's by getting the American market recognized. But I know that Toronto has been developing rapidly its film community, and I've seen it firsthand just by networking, right? Like look at yourself. It's like
No.
there's another artist in here, you know what I mean? There's another filmmaker, right? Another writer. So when I was a kid growing up, I always thought, oh, that's the dream, right? You go to LA, that's where the true artists live.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's so fascinating, right? And credit to a lot of like Drake and Bieber, like for putting Toronto on the map in that sense, right? Because you kind of have that pride now, and you kind of see the possibility of like through our own works, like what we can do for the city. So that's awesome. So we won't get too much in that documentary, but maybe we'll have you back on to promote it once it's out, and you can talk about the whole process and all the ups and downs. You know what I mean? Because I'm sure there's going to be tons of that. But are there any individuals in the film industry that you aspire to become or inspired you? I know we talked about Spike Lee and Tyler Perry. Maybe talk about like why they are such critical people in your life, like role models.
I would actually say I grew to like them,
Okay.
but the one who actually propelled me into it is actually your inspiration, your hero, Quentin Tarantino.
No way. Wow.
Yeah, yeah, that's
So
why I'm
much
like,
alike.
oh,
That's why you freaked out. That's right. That's
yeah,
right.
because you know why? I was watching The Hateful Eight,
Right.
and I was so used to like movies starting out with the characters going, start out good, something wrong happens,
Yeah.
it's their problem.
Right.
But this guy, he started it completely different. Like the character didn't start out good. So I'm watching the movie and I was like about like how old was I? Maybe 8 or just above 8. But my mind got so used to like stories going a certain way that when he did it, I'm watching, I'm like, wait, what's this guy doing? Who?
Right? He's breaking all the rules. Yeah, man. I'm
Yeah.
telling you, this guy's crazy. And that's why we love him so much, right? It's like we want to be that guy that revolutionizes through storytelling, like how you perceive film. It's exactly that. Like Django Unchained, I'll give you an example. Like when I watched in the theater, because I watched Pulp Fiction on TV, and I really didn't get that theatrical experience. So I was kind of like on and off. I was also really young too, so I probably didn't understand it, the maturity to understand it. But I watched like Django Unchained in the theater because I was like, yo, the trailers look awesome. And I was also much older, right? I was more mature to understand it. And like you said, like right when the movie started and the music was playing, and it wasn't a score, it was like just a soundtrack, and the credits were on. It was like flashy, stylized kind of typography. Even the shots, I was just like, yo, this guy, because we're so used to like the studios and like director for hire, every film feels the same. And then I realized like, wow, it can actually become, you can be an auteur, you can like make your own films. It's possible. Obviously you have to be extremely talented and hardworking, but nevertheless, it's possible. And yeah, man, I was blown away. Same thing with a Hateful Eight. Hateful Eight was a great film, but I'm saying for me, it was the Django Unchained because it came 3 years prior. Watched it in the theater, man. Holy shit, with the Tupac like soundtrack playing when there was a whole shootout. Like I was like, wow, you can really make it personal. You know what I mean? You can really make films personal. Because up until that point, man, I thought it was like a huge studio collaborative kind of system, and like, you slap your name on at the end. And I'm like, yo, this is like Quentin Tarantino's work, and like you're just in his world. You know what I mean? That's exactly how I envision. I'm so happy we share a commonality like that. That's amazing, man. Tarantino, great person to be inspired by, right?
Real.
Yeah,
You
amazing.
can tell his stamp. You can tell his
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like that's what, for me, that's my mission, is like get to a point where you're undeniable. So like when your films are out, like people look forward to your name, right? Like seeing another film by Daniel Calderon or another film by Gabriel, Charles Rogers, right? It's like you just want to have that stamp. And that's also one of the reasons why I created 94 Productions, is like this entity to kind of like represent me, kind of like OVO. It's like you see the owl and you just think of him,
That's
so
nice.
like that 94 logo, man. Like, yeah, like I'm so proud of it. I know I'm self-indulgent that way, but like I really you gotta be in this business, right?
Yeah.
You gotta promote the hell out of it. But honestly, that's the dream, man, is to make that synonymous with me, right? When you see it in a film or a production, or because I plan to even work outside of film, right? Music videos. I just anything creative. Would you agree? Like I'm so creative, man, where it's like I just trying to tackle every creative outlet possible. That's why I love doing these podcasts. It's creativity in its own way, sharing stories between each other. But anyway, that's amazing. I'm glad we're on the same page about that. And that's the beauty of this podcast, right? Is you get to understand each other's human side and what kind of coordinates. But yeah, so these individuals, you were explaining how they're very impactful, and it was Tarantino that really changed your mindset about how films are made, or really how characters and stories are told. How would you want your story to be remembered by the audience in the film industry itself?
Mm, mm, mm.
It's a tough one, but I always ask this, and it pertains to legacy, because my
Yeah,
biggest thing is leave behind a legacy no matter what you do, right? It's like I'm a big on history, and it's like I love the idea that if you really make an impact, you know what I mean? It's like, what will you be remembered for? How will they remember Gabriel Charles Rogers?
yeah. Impact is definitely what I'm going for. I
Yeah,
think that's a reason why the journey for me has been quite long. I wanted to get there very fast, but as I've matured, I understood what you just said. Like, to make an impact doesn't come overnight, and especially getting to where you want to be in terms of your creative endeavors,
yeah,
it really takes time. And I just learned to love the time that it's taken
yeah,
for me to get there and enjoy it. Like right now, this is part of that time, like to
yeah,
enjoy, to talk about and do that huddle, go back into creative mode, do
yeah,
that huddle, go back into the creative mode, and then,
absolutely, yeah,
you know, but impact, I want people to remember me and through my films and just have a place in their heart for my films, have a place for my films in their heart.
yeah. Make them that memorable that they'll always go back to it, right? Like they'll
Yeah.
uplift them, inspire them, especially if they're watching him in a certain moment in time, right? Like that's how film works for me, right? I'll watch something when I was 15, then I'll watch it when I was 25, like the Rocky movies, and it's amazing how it hits you different. It's a different
Mhm.
impact. Have you ever done that with a film that you watched when you were younger? You watched it again when you're older?
The Wood.
Which one?
The Wood.
The Wood? No, I never heard this one. Was it?
That's
Yeah, it hit you different. The
it
Wood.
hit me different.
That's odd. Let me search this up because I gotta know what it's like. So how did it hit you different, bro?
I mean, it's the part where everything, the whole story, just brothers growing up, uh, being together as at a young age,
Mhm.
growing up when they're older, experiencing things differently.
Right.
I seen that transition. I am seeing that transition in my own life. Um, but it made me just more aware of, like, to be honest, how girls feel.
Okay.
There's a certain scene with the main character and a female he really, really liked. And also, like, with your brothers that you grow up with, you never know really what experiences really, like, stuck with them that you guys spend together until you guys talk about it.
That's true. And I'm looking at it right now. It's a coming of age story. For those of you that don't know, it's a comedy drama, which is what I specialize in. Like I love doing. So it's like, has its comedic moments, and it's not a laugh out loud kind of film, but it just has its like quips, but it's very serious, very emotional at its core. Um, and yeah, man, I love these kinds of stories. A lot of my work right now that I do is about is essentially a coming of age. Like the last one you commended me on, like Grazie, the Italian one. That in a way is a coming of age, right? Um, just someone realizing, uh, coming into their own, right, and like how mature they have to be um, to kind of handle the challenges of life. So yeah, honestly, I like what you said, and that's very important too. That you mentioned how like how the mind works for a woman. Like, is that what you meant by like the characters you saw, kind of like how they're presented? Yeah, because
Yeah.
again, a writer, man, like empath. I love that you said that. You have to know how to write both if you want to be a good, a talented, memorable writer. Because women are 50% the audience, and they'll know if a man's writing the dialogue, right, or how believable it is. So I get complimented on the few works that I've done, that I've written and I actually published, where a woman character, like Lady of the Night. Have you watched Lady of the Night?
Oh,
One
I
of my
haven't
films.
seen that one.
Yeah, so I'll send you that. So Lady of the Night was a film I did last year, and well, it came out this past year. Yeah, basically there was like a woman character, kind of trying to surviving prostitution, and she's trying to flee the city with her boyfriend. But the dialogue that I wrote, the actress complimented me so much that I was very authentic to like what she would say, and I don't know, I kind of like had that intuition on what kind of words that would be spoken in those certain moments. So I took a lot of pride in that, right? Because there's one thing for a guy to compliment you, because you know how guys for the most part would talk, but for a woman to compliment you on your dialogue, that means that like you said, you have that empathy, you have that creative intuition. Right. So that's really good, man. I'm really enjoying this conversation. Like I said, for those of you who don't know, like I have never met Gabe outside of his podcast, outside of Instagram text. So it's really cool to see and pick your brain, where you're coming up as a writer. You seem like a very humble, genuine guy, like I said, and I wish you nothing but the best. And I look forward to connecting with you again, and inspiring you or mentoring you in any which way that I can, right? And possibly collaborating. You never know in the future, right? We can definitely help each other grow. That's what we're here for, right? We just got to find the right project that suits us, that fits us, and kind of meet halfway. But yeah, thank you again for coming on the podcast. You have anything else to say before we go?
I mean, I wish you nothing but the best as well.
Thank you, sir.
Creative endeavors. I hope you get there. So you see it.
100%. Thank you so much, Gabriel. I really appreciate that. Thank you everyone for listening, and we'll talk soon.